What's up, everybody? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Lead From Here podcast. I am Jason. Today we are talking about I forgot again. The fun topic of going over a leader's head. This is a topic that you have to be very careful with because depending on the situation, depending on who your leader is, depending on who your leader's leader is, it can get you in a bad spot quickly. But there are times where it is actually very important for you to do because sometimes you're just not going to get what you need for your team or for yourself without it. Going over your leader's head is something that I would reserve for a very, very, very limited range of opportunities. You really have to know that your leader isn't going to help. Like that is the baseline. They're not going to help. They've either said so or you've asked so many times that nothing's happening. And two, it has to be a big deal. It has to be something that's truly impactful. And the more you can back it up with data, the better. You can't go over your leader's head and be like, listen, I've talked to him 20 times about the fact that there's pickles on my chicken sandwich that you guys buy for us every week. I don't want pickles. Like, can you get some sandwiches without pickles? That's not going to go well for you, ultimately. You have to understand that if you're going over your boss's head, you are betraying trust to an extent. Understood that you've tried with that boss, hopefully, if you're going over their head, you've tried multiple times with this boss to get it squared away. But if they've said, listen, we're not going to move forward with this, and you still feel like this is a big problem and you have the data to back that up, then that's a good opportunity to go to their boss and say, listen, ask for a skip level, ask for whatever, just time on their calendar just to chat. Go in there. Be totally respectful. Do not throw your boss under the bus, your actual boss under the bus. Say like, I know he's got a lot going on, she's got a lot going on, and I really think this is important, and I think because of all his or her priorities, it's falling to the bottom of the list, and I think it's actually very impactful, and this is the data I have to back that up, and I would like to get your input on it. What do you think? Like this is what I see. This is what I think would happen if we made this change. What do you think about that? And they may say, I agree with your boss. We're not going to do anything about this. And then at that point, it's time for you to let it go. Whatever it is, time to let it go. And if it's that hard to let go, or if you think you're that passionate that it's impactful to your team, it might be time to make a change. That's a lot of times when you are at complete odds with your boss and your boss's boss about things that are very important, sometimes it's just time to move on. And that's a tough topic, and it's tough to hear because people want to stay, people want to fix things, and I'm a proponent for staying and fixing things because I think, that's the best way to make change. Like, you can't bounce around all these places and make a real change anywhere because change takes time. So if it doesn't work out, it might be time to go. It also might be time to dig in your heels and keep collecting data and show the trends, and then look at your team. Do you trust your team? Have you built trust with your team? If you have, maybe you do an experiment. You don't necessarily you're the boss, so ask for forgiveness. Understand that could still get you in trouble. But you're the boss, you're the leader of the team. You are in charge of your team. So if you do an experiment and try a few things for a short amount of time, for a set amount of time, just go for it. Give it a shot. And then if the data shows better, that's a good opportunity to be like, hey, we experimented with this for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or month or whatever you're going to do from a time frame perspective, and look at the results. There's a stark thing. I really think we need to revisit this. And then if they still say no, again, probably time to revisit your thoughts on leaving. But ultimately, there are times where you're just going to have to accept that this isn't a priority for the company. It's not always easy to hear, and if it's impacting you or impacting your team, it's hard to swallow. But ultimately, you have to be very delicate when you're going over somebody's head, and it has to be a very, very good reason. And you have to be ready to let that go or move on. And this is a lot of emotion and layers tied up in this concept. What I want you to understand is no matter what you do, you're putting yourself at risk by doing this. No matter how good your argument is, no matter how strong your data is, if you have the wrong type of leader, the type of leader that's going to take offense to that, you could get fired on the spot. Technically, it would be very difficult, but it could happen, and especially in an unhealthy organization. So definitely take this with a grain of salt. Make sure you're cautious. Make sure you are having the conversations with your leader. Like literally beat it to death as much as you possibly can before you actually make the decision to go above that leader. Because at the end of the day, they are still in charge of your career. Even if you're right, they're still in charge of your career. Even if the change gets made by their boss, they're still in charge of your career. So it could come back to bite you in the long run if you're not careful. And if your boss still has clout. So just something to take away. Not saying don't try and make change. It's very important to make change. It's very important to continue to push and pull where you can. Just be understanding that it could go south. And that's, I think, from my perspective, we talk about it and I'll link it here, the fear of being fired. Like you kind of have to get rid of that as you become a leader, because sometimes you're just going to have to put your neck out there, and sometimes it could go bad and you can get fired. But at the end of the day, as long as you're doing the right thing by your team, you can go to your next company or to unemployment or while you're trying to find a job with your head held high, because you try to do the right thing for your team, which is what a leader does. So just some things to think about. This is not specific advice to a specific situation, so please don't go get fired and then email me telling me you're pissed at me. Just be thoughtful, be engaged, and bring as much data as possible, and try a lot with your current boss. I hope this was helpful. If you want to dive more into this topic, we definitely can. If you want to bring some real world scenarios, hit me up at jason@leadfromhere.co. Happy to kind of talk it through. Social media channels as well. Appreciate your time. And if you appreciate or enjoy this content, I would appreciate very much. I said appreciate like 4 times in the last 3 minutes. But I would appreciate you liking, subscribing, following, all those things. Take care, everybody.